Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Oh my gosh. Sorry, I know I was stalling. I got out of the gym really late and then I was like, oh shit, I have to go. I do not have time for this. So that was why. My bad. Okay. So from what I was sent, there's obviously like this. I know, hello. So from what I was sent, we're doing 1300 to 1308, and then tomorrow it's like I think an 11 chapter chunk, and then on Friday it's like a 15 chapter chunk, and then there's like the last chunk of chapters which is 18 chapters, and I don't know when I'm going to do that one. I'll probably have to do it. I don't think I'll do it this weekend. I'll probably do it on Monday. So that'll probably be when I'm able to do it. But yeah. And then it'll be, because then I'm going on a trip, so then it'll be like a break for a week-ish before I do the final volume, which is going to be crazy. But yeah. Hello, how's everyone's day? How's everyone doing? How's everyone's morning? I know, because here's the thing. I'll probably start doing streams earlier around this time. Yeah, I'll probably start doing streams around this time for the next little bit. Other than the odd time when I have to do it like later at night. But it'll probably be around noon, if not earlier, just because it works better with my schedule. Which is good. Yeah. Honestly, fair. Fair. Hopefully I can be good, like, background noise. Which will be good. Yeah, like, I can't see... Because I don't know what the... It'll probably be, like... Next week I won't be reading anything, and then the week after I'll probably be reading. And then we'll get it done. But it'll be done by July 5th. Like, we'll finish within the next couple weeks. Which is crazy to think. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna start. Chapter 1300, the fourth person. I know, my voice is a little heavy this morning. It's like a little bit. It's a little bit heavy. We're gonna see. I think it should be fine. But fingers crossed. Okay, chapter 1300, the fourth person. Bernadette started out staring at the outline for a long time until it gradually became clear and the dawn approached. It was a silhouette of a large island. On the island were huge, towering, dark green trees that almost bordered the black covering the ground in mountains. Although Bernadette couldn't be sure that this was a primitive island that her father had once visited, her intuition as a clairvoyant told her that this was likely the place she was seeking. As the coastline entered her eyes, she pursed her lips and lowered her head. She chanted an honorific name. The fool that doesn't belong to this era, the mysterious ruler above the grey fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. Right on the heels of that, Queen Mystic Bernadette raised her hand and made the careless dawn stop in the nearby waters without approaching the shore. At the same time, the sounds of pianos, violins, cellos, flutes, and other musical instruments interweaved together into a lively tune. As the music echoed, the toast, steak, mashed potatoes, fried mushrooms, and other dishes on the plate jumped up one after another and returned to the oven. Amidst a dance, it threw themselves into the trash can. The red wine bottles, white dining cloth, and other linen items had all returned to the original positions. They either sealed themselves with a wooden cork or kept folding themselves neatly. Then Bernadette gently threw out a bright and unrealistic ball of yarn with her right hand. The ball rolled into the void, leaving the thread black. Bernadette followed it and strolled through the spirit world before arriving at the borders of the nameless island. This, Queen Mystic wasn't in a rush to head deeper. She searched for the possible existence as a Black Emperor mausoleum, and she cautiously made the sea-like blue eyes turn dark and deep. She temporarily lost focus, as though she was prying into the secrets of the river, and fate A few seconds later, Bernadette's eyes returned to normal as she subconsciously looked into the sky. She felt that she was being watched by a certain existence. Of course, this was something she had expected, as she had taken the initiative to recite Mr. Fool's honorific name. Above the grey fog in an ancient palace, Klein accommodated the Fool's card, draped himself in the curtain, and held the staff of stars. He was checking the situation on the island through Queen Mystic's prayer light. In his true vision field, the island was shrouded in a thin layer of distorted blackness. It made it impossible for him to see the situation inside directly. He could only obtain Bernadette's point of view. Even if it's not the primitive island that Emperor Roselle discovered, this place isn't simple. Klein nodded indiscernibly as he waited for Queen Mystic to do a deeper exploration. Bernadette didn't use the ball of yarn anymore because she had premonitions that she was going to lead herself into a dangerous abyss that she had no way of fending off. She took out an illusory hat and wore it. Her captain-looking figure disappeared, her existence concealed. This was only one of the fairy tale magic that stemmed from the magical reenactment. At its core, the hat that made one invisible. Then Bernadette followed the path that appeared to have been opened by humans and entered the forest consisting of huge trees. There was no bird chirping, no wild beast roaring, or distant disturbances caused by crawling insects. It was so peaceful. As if time had froze, so dead that it was no sign of life. According to Bernadette's understanding, there should be many supernatural beings that had already gone extinct from the outside world. Normally it would be quite lively, but now she felt as though she was walking through an uninhabited cemetery. Every giant tree was a tombstone. If it were any of the Beyonders that were weaker minds, they would definitely feel tense, burdened with the heavy pressure that slowly approached the edge of losing control. However, Bernadette's expression didn't change at all, as though she was already used to the proceedings through dangers and strangeness. After walking for nearly half an hour, she still didn't see any living thing or even sense the wind. Suddenly her vision opened up because the huge trees in front of her had become sparse. Bernadette didn't feel any joy. Instead, she slowed down and raised her hand to press against her glabella. A pair of eyes that were without glasses appeared in front of her, looking cold and heartless. Then the pair of eyes of mystery prying was grabbed by an invisible hand and placed on the invisible person's face. This was Bernadette's invisible servant. The servant brought the eyes of mystery prying and quickly crossed the remaining past an open forest. During this process, the vision gradually became clear, as if it no longer was affected by the faint blackness in the air. Finally, the invisible servant arrived at the boundary of the open region and transmitted a situation to Bernadette through the eyes of mystery prying. Outside the sparse forest, there was an empty space that was countless creatures prostrating there. Among them were red dragons and skin flowing with flames. They were treated as they had gnawls for eyes and hollows for mouths. They were demonic wolves with 8 legs, giants with 4 arms and limbs, and feathered serpents with oily feathers and scales with dark green shades. The latter coiled there, resembling small hills that were also different kinds of creatures that looked like humans and wild beast hybrid. At this moment, they were facing one direction. They had upper bodies and head prostrated as though they were worshipping an unknown existence. None of them made a sound. There were even a few humans among them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When Bernadette counted a few humanoid creatures, her blue eyes suddenly widened. She had learned from Admiral Star's Catlia that the primitive island which her father had discovered had a special type of corruption that allowed dead creatures to return here to the source, regardless of where their corpses were. Amongst the knights who served Emperor Roselle, Grimm was first to be killed because of this, followed by William and Polly. However, apart from the 3 of them, no one else sacrificed the corresponding matter in the moments. There were 5 supernatural mutated creatures present. In addition, Bernadette also knew that her father had eventually resolved the corruption problem and made the primitive island his secret base. Is this not the island? Queen Mystic examined the 5 human thoughts in her eyes of mystery prying. They were dressed in opulent clothes from Roselle's era, and their face was pale. Their skin was shriveled, and they looked more like zombies than human. My hair looks like a piece. I just got out of the gym, and I quickly did a body shower, and the steam flattened my hair because I have very thin white people hair. So it is what it is. I needed to stream. I didn't have time to deal with it. After the 5 of them were prostrating, Bernadette temporarily couldn't see her face. She could only patiently wait for praying to the end. A few minutes later, those creatures straightened their bodies and the entire forest came alive. Seizing the opportunity, Bernadette saw the 5 of them and comprehended what their memories and their images she knew. Grim was really grim. There was a primitive island. That's Uncle William. I remember him. He taught me swordplay before. Uncle Polly. When she recognized the forest person, the look of astonishment could be seen on Bernadette's face. The person was Edwards. In Bernadette's memory, the knight had outlived her father's death. Then he migrated his family to Lemberg, and he hadn't died on this primitive island. According to the information she received from Vice Admiral Iceberg, Edwina had lived for nearly 100 years. She died peacefully when she was buried in the cemetery in suburbs of Lemberg. Uncle Edwards has also returned to this island. Didn't he not experience any corruption and didn't die because of this? Thoughts flashed through Bernadette's mind one after another. As a result, the eyes of mystery prying on the invisible servant's face kept staring at the human suspected to be Edwards. Thank you for contributing to the slander. The gentleman had an old appearance and his hair was completely white. It was the same portrait of the ancestor of the advanced years, the one that Edwina Edwards had shown her, and from this facial feature that outlined Bernadette could tell what he looked like in his prime. At that time, Edwards had been her equestrian teacher. Suddenly, the human who was suspected to be Edwards turned his head and gazed coldly at the invisible servant. Although Bernadette had inherited quite a bit of Emperor Rozelle's inheritance, she definitely didn't rely on the items in advance to the point of the mysterious world. At that moment, she made a prompt decision and directly made the eyes of mystery prying vanish, allowing the invisible... Oh my god, bless you. Holy shit. Allowing the invisible servant to return to the spirit world. Right on the heels of that, she quickly changed her position. At the same time, above the grey fog, Clyde tapped the edge of the long molten table. Holy shit. The long molten table. And enhanced the probability of Bernadette not being discovered. When the person suspected to be Edwards retracted his blank gaze and walked to the different spots in the primitive forest with the surrounding creatures, Clyde frowned slightly and muttered to himself. What kind of abnormality happened? He remembered that the Emperor had already resolved the corruption of the cosmos on this primitive island and was never alive. However, these creatures were still worshipping an unknown existence, holding a mysterious ritual that was close to the earliest descriptions of the diary. After the Emperor's death, did a particular entity from the cosmos infiltrate this place again? Or is it that they're worshipping some symbol left behind by Emperor? Who are these other two? They look like Edwards and Benjamin Abraham from the historical fragments. Klein, who was temporarily unable to see what was being worshipped due to the faint black interference of the island, could only follow Bernadette's eyes to observe their surroundings. After a while, Bernadette, who was a proficient in prophesying, finally confirmed that there's no living creatures in the open space. She summoned in the invisible servant again and gave it the eyes of mystery prying. The invisible servant passed through the sparse area of the forest and empty area, carefully arriving at the spot where the creatures had been worshipping. There was a huge rock, and on the simple baldachin made of dark redwood, the invisible servant circled halfway and arrived in the front of the baldachin. In the empty inside, there was no statue, nor was there his embedded form of symbols. The creature on the island was prying to something that didn't seem to exist. Oh my god. There we go. Dude, here's the thing. Whenever I sneeze, I also yawn. I don't know if that's like a normal thing people do, but every time I sneeze, if it's like a strong enough sneeze, I will automatically yawn as well. Through the eyes of mystery prying, Bernadette saw the interior of the dark red baldachin was empty. I got it. Nothing was there. All she could do was see shadows and unusually surrounding things in reality. Don't worry, we've only read one chapter. Bernadette's just on the primitive island. She was unable to prophesize anything from it, having no choice but to look away. She followed her intuition and made an invisible servant walk towards the other end of the open area, which was also part of the primitive forest filled with towering trees. As the invisible servant couldn't be too far away from her, she silently followed behind. While wearing an invisible hat, she unhurriedly passed through the area where all the creatures on the island were gathered. Here, the sky seemed to perpetually gloomy, one permanent by a faint blackness. Time passed quickly. The invisible servant entered the forest and blotted out the sky with the tree branches, and everything before it suddenly dimmed. Right on the heels of that, the nearly transparent, cold, and undetectable eyes of Mystery Prying saw through the dim environment. There was a pale white corpse between the trees, skulls, and rotting corpses hunting down from many branches. They consisted of dragons, avian creatures, and some 8-legged, while others were strange giants which occupied every empty spot in the forest. At a glance, Bernadette seemed to have arrived at a cemetery. The scene naturally surfaced in her mind. It was a scene of supernatural beings gifted birth to their descendants before they die, thus passing on their beyonder characteristics to them. And these creatures would struggle towards this region for the primitive forest from every direction. In search of the unoccupied spot, then facing a particular direction, they would silently die, gradually rotting and being reduced to bones. Hi, Stan. Good luck on your exam. What's the meaning behind this? As a clairvoyant, Bernadette fully believed that the scenes produced in her mind was to happen in the real world. However, she was puzzled about the type of power that made the creatures in the primitive island choose this area as their tomb. Furthermore, since Grimm, William, and Polly, who also died long ago, appeared to remain alive in some form, it didn't make sense. The supernatural and mutated creatures had stayed on the island all the while and had suffered even more corruption, would end up dying. This made Bernadette frown slightly as she directed the invisible servant to continue producing deeper into the creature's cemetery. Just like that, the invisible servant proceeded forward to nearly 15 minutes, and the forest filled with bones and corpses. Finally, it saw a fourth object beyond trees, weeds, and corpses. It was a black stone pillar and was very thick, with a width spanning about 6 arm spans and 30 to 40 meters tall. The surface was covered in rings, which were signs of withering. It resembled a finger wearing rings that didn't suit its size. Bernadette made the eyes of Mystery Prying observe the stone pillar for several seconds, but she didn't discover anything mysterious about it. It was as though it was a symbol that was casually erected. The invisible servant looked around and discovered that the surrounding corpses around the stone pillar didn't suffer from serious rot, but there was even covered in rather intact flesh and skin. There aren't any supernatural powers or magical effects that are different from other places. Unless the new decrees were gathered near the stone pillars, it's impossible for them to have such an unified trend. Bernadette suspected that it wasn't because that there was no mysterious influence on this matter, but that it would only happen in specific moments. She didn't use her powers or prophecy to search for the reason. This was because the prophecy at its core was to pry into the secrets of the river of fate. The more serious the problem involved was, the higher her status and the level more dangerous the backlash would bring her. At this moment, it was impossible for Bernadette to not be cautious. She was afraid that it might involve an unknown existence. In addition, this hadn't caused any harm to her. She didn't have to take the risk to make a prophecy. After searching for a while to no avail, the invisible servant continued forward, attempting to pass through the cemetery and head to the other region of the forest. Just then, Bernadette heard a rustling sound. This was the sound of a breeze passing through the vegetation in a tidal wave of the void. Ever since she landed on the strange island, this was Bernadette's first time feeling the wind. Subconsciously, she made the invisible servant look back at the black stone pillars. In the eyes of Mystery Prying, the corpses around the stone pillars began to rot and shed one by one. New flesh and blood grew out as if their own spirituality, and their skins slowly covered in a harrowing scene 1 inch at a time. This change lasted for less than 10 seconds before stopping. A number of corpses no longer showed any signs of decay. It looked like they had just died. In the next second, a mutated curly-haired baboon and a wolf with 8 legs wobbled to their feet. Their fur was slightly white and their skin was slightly dry, their eyes dull and cold. Then the 2 originally deceased creatures got their bearings and left the cemetery from different spots. Bernadette's gaze froze as she watched this. Her brows raised slightly as she finally understood why the creatures on the island had struggled to come to this area before dying and why they had died here. Here, death, an endpoint, didn't mean entering the state of eternal slumber, but rather a new beginning. Furthermore, this wasn't the resurrection of a zombie or skeleton that was a spirit guide was capable of. It was a new life, with a certain will and vitality. A distortion and disorder that the world's underlying rules. In addition, it seemed to contain some mysteries of the Black Emperor's resurrection. However, those who obtain new life aren't in a proper state. They're even closer to zombies. Such rivals are very problematic. Klein, who was above the grey fog, also saw this scene and had many guesses. Of course, this was under the premise that the Emperor had fundamentally left the last mausoleum here and exerted some form of influence here. As he thought about it, Klein rejected this idea. This was because before the Emperor became an angel, this primitive island had a similar situation. The dead Grimm was proof. Yes, this exact detail that happened back in the might not be the same as what happened now. Perhaps compared to the past, it had already been distorted and disordered. Klein nodded gently, prepared to bless and protect Bernadette at any time. Bernadette also came up with a guess. She didn't allow the invisible servant to stay in the spot or wait for a new tide of life. This was because she foreseen a development. After being repeatedly affected by the new tide of life, the invisible servant would oddly develop some sort of sentence and come alive. In addition, it wasn't that the invisible servant hadn't done an investigation prior to this, but that it ultimately failed to discover anything special with the black stone pillar. Bernadette didn't believe that it would gain any new by adding here. In such a situation, it was better to establish basic understanding in the primitive island rather than alarming an unknown existence due to deeper study. Many a time there was a problem that eluded one of the beginning, but the answer might not near the end. This was thanks to the experience that Bernadette had accumulated over the years. The corpses on the trees and the branches gradually grew fewer, and the invisible servant moved towards. During this process, Bernadette discovered another phenomenon. In the new tide of life, it was certain that the corpse would be revived. However, once they revived and left the empty area, the rest of the corpses would be attracted like metal to magnets in the next few minutes. They would stiffly move towards the center, filling up the corresponding spots like they were in line for a bestowment. The law of beyonder characteristics convergence. No, it doesn't seem like that. The descendants have already passed down their characteristic. As Bernadette's thoughts wandered, she suddenly thought of a question. It's impossible for the deceased to produce new beyonder characteristics after obtaining new life, but do they still possess their powers of the previous lives? Once I have a completed grasp on the situation on this island, I can find a resurrected being to test it out. Bernadette quickly made a decision and followed that invisible servant's route forward. She didn't use any beyonder powers other than her invisibility hat. She hoped that she could disturb the environment and miss out on any deities. Therefore, she didn't walk too fast. She took 15 minutes to leave the cemetery. The invisible servant had already entered the forest ahead. It could hear the occasional bird chirp and the beast roar. The vibrant vitality here was different from other remaining regions. Above the grey fog, Klein sighed. Thankfully, now that I'm the owner of Sephra Castle, here I have the status of a king of angels. I can observe reality for as long as I want to, and I don't have to worry about draining my spirituality. Yes, the only thing I need to pay attention to is my body that's hidden in the ancient city located in the fog of history before the first epoch. After traveling for another few minutes, the invisible servant suddenly saw something and appeared incongruous with the primitive island's environment. It was a log cabin that seemed to be the residence of a forest ranger. The log cabin was brown in color and was less than 2.5 meters tall. It looked like it was prepared for humans, but every detail was rough and crude. At that moment, the cabin's door was open, allowing Bernadette to see the situation inside through the eyes of mystery prying. A wooden table, a fur-covered bed, a low-backed chair formed a scene of a residence lived by humans. Who lives here? With the thought of Bernadette, the invisible servant rapidly approached the cabin in search for possible clues. It then realized that the interior of the cabin No, my voice just does this. It just cuts out sometimes. It'll reset back in a little bit, and then it'll cut out again, and then it'll reset back, and then it'll cut out again. No idea why it does this, but it just does. It seems like no one had lived here for a very long time. Just as Bernadette was using the eyes of mystery prying and careful inspect detail of every cabin, she suddenly had a premonition. She hurriedly made the invisible servant turn around. I have an appointment with my family doctor in, I think, 3 weeks. In like early mid-July, I have an appointment with my family doctor. But then I have to get a referral to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So, yeah. And no, it never hurts when it goes deep. Like, it doesn't... I notice absolutely no difference other than the fact that my voice is now deeper. I truly don't know. Yeah. At some point in time, a person has appeared behind the invisible servant. He was wearing luxurious clothes from the Roselle era. His hair was completely white, and he looked old. He had a pair of light blue eyes that was extremely cold and blank. Edwards. This was the knight who had outlived the Emperor, Vice Admiral Iceberg Edwina's ancestors. Edward stared at the invisible servant for a few seconds. Suddenly he opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Your Highness." Yeah. No, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if every time my voice gets deep, it's just like Amon trying to parasitize me. Who knows? Yeah. But it's happened since I was young. Like, I've had it since I was, like, a kid. And then when I'm, like, if I haven't slept properly, or if I'm really hungover, it's really, really deep. Bernadette fell silent for 2 seconds before replying to the invisible servant. "Uncle Edwards, why are you here?" She used the way... She used the way she addressed him, and she was young, to reduce the chances of an accident. Her voice reverberated in the sound of air and the invisible servant as a conduit. It was dry, dull, and completely different than normal. Edward's face was pale, as if he had just crawled out of the grave without any warmth. I don't know either. When I woke up, I discovered that I had returned to this island. This might be my destiny, a destiny of guarding His Majesty. He paused with every word he said, but he didn't give the impression that he was out of breath. It seemed like he hadn't spoken for a long time, so much so that his throat was rusty. He wasn't used to speaking. Without waiting for Bernadette's further inquiries, the knight who was famous across the continent more than 100 years ago added with a flat tone, "His Majesty's mausoleum is nearby. I've been guarding this place, waiting for him to revive. But after so many years, the mausoleum has never changed. There hasn't been any signs of resurrection." Bernadette made an invisible servant look around and said, "This log cabin is where you live?" Edward's exposed skin was slightly shriveled. It matched the aging spots he originally had. His voice was low and hoarse, and he answered, "That's right. I used the surrounding trees to make materials to build this cabin." Bernadette's invisible servant looked in the direction she had come from. "Uncle William and the others aren't with you." Edward's cold, wooden eyes moved. "They have long been corrupted and are dead. Although they've come back to life, there's more than monsters. They aren't like their former selves. Your Highness, you must be wary of them and avoid them. Do not trust anyone but Benjamin and myself." Bernadette fell silent a while before asking through the invisible servant, "Where's my father's mausoleum? I want to take a look." Edward's somewhat stiff neck moved. "Okay." He then took a step towards the cabin and took out a russet black axe. "I'll take you there," Edward said as he looked at the invisible servant and normally couldn't be seen. During this process, his expression was stiff and almost unchanged. "All right." Along the periphery of the forest, Bernadette responded using an invisible servant to make her hoarse voice echo in the surroundings. Edward was almost 1.9 meters tall, and he looked rather thin. He carried his axe and walked behind the log cabin before saying in a flat tone, "It's very close. Be careful along the way." I don't know if I trust him. Bernadette immediately controlled the invisible servant and made it follow the luxurious dressed Edwards. Is he chill? Okay. Maybe. Maybe I'm just like... And then that's why it just has to, be so big. Walking through the forest, one after another, Bernadette suddenly made the invisible servant ask, "Uncle Edwards, what were you worshipping in the empty space from before?" Edwards didn't turn his head as he maintained the same pace. "His Majesty." At least 2 kilometers behind him, the invisible servant Bernadette immediately pricked up her brows. She took nearly 3 seconds to control her emotions. Through the invisible servant, she continued asking without any emotions, "Uncle Williams and the others are worshipping him?" Edwards paused, but he kept his back towards the invisible servant and the eyes of mystery prying. "No." He slowed down as though he was thinking of an answer. "I don't know what they worship." Bernadette's eyes narrowed slightly as though she could see some changes in the river of fate. She didn't ask any more questions as she made the invisible servant silently follow Edwards. Amidst the dark green towering trees and the black sharp shrubs, they headed for the island's mountain peak. In just 4 to 5 minutes, the trees up ahead disappeared. This wasn't a process that went from a dense to sparse until there was nothing. Indeed, the towering trees and suddenly disappeared after an imaginary boundary line. Beyond the invisible line was a mountain that was hundreds of meters tall. It was covered in dark green trees and it was almost black in color. From afar, it was almost as if there was one of the forests virtual and inseparable. However, the other side of the mountain facing Edwards and Bernadette was mostly without vegetation. Half of the mountains had been excavated. In the middle of the mountain, a pitch-black mausoleum stood there with a majestic appearance. Most of it was part of the mountain range. A small portion of it had signs of man-made constructions and polishing. It truly expounded on what it meant to be a mountain mausoleum. Thus, the mausoleum didn't look like a common pyramid. Instead, it looked like a towering mountain. It wasn't exactly symmetrical, but it definitely majestic. Perhaps the mausoleum itself had influenced its surroundings, or perhaps Edwards had cleared the area, its surface of voids and weeds, nor was it covered in vines commonly seen in other mountains. This allowed Bernadette to see the various texts and symbols engraved on the mausoleum through her eyes of mystery prying. She saw a heavy, thin, meter-tall stone door that seemed to prepare for giants. Bernadette wasn't unfamiliar with those words and symbols. She didn't take much time to recognize them as either the civil code that had created by her father, the new social trends that had established, or even some design drafts of some invitations. Just as Bernadette was carefully examining it, Klein, who was above the grey fog, was completely certain that this was the last mausoleum left behind by Emperor Zozel. This was similar to the mausoleum that he had seen in the Tudor ruins. It had majesticness and distortion traits of the Black Emperor. After walking out of the primitive forest and passing through the invisible boundaries, they arrived near the mausoleum. Edward stopped. His half-turned body and aimed his pale face and cold eyes on the invisible servant. He said without any change in his voice, "Don't go in. It will interrupt the resurrection." Bernadette frowned slightly and thought for 2 seconds before using the eyes of mystery prying to lock onto the mausoleum. Then her blue eyes resembled a sea, became extremely deep, with the surface of the sea before it storms. Under such circumstances, her eyes clearly lost focus as her vision turned blurry. She was praying into the secrets of the river of fate and making the prophecy for what would happen next. Klein tapped the long molten table and increased the probability of her success. Then he prepared himself to resist the corruption of the cosmos. Of course, the latter wasn't necessary, because Bernadette had a grade 0 sealed artifact that she could control. Bernadette raised her right hand in the next second. Her skin instantly turned as white as snow, her lips turned as red as blood, and her hair was as black as ebony. An illusion, ancient mirror appeared in her hand. This was Snow White, of her fairy tale magic. Bernadette had used this enhancement to success rate and accuracy of her prophecy. Silently, she saw a scene. The majestic and stolen dark mausoleum visibly shook as the tall, heavy stone door opened. Then a huge black arm stretched out from the stone door. The style of the arm was close to that of a tree on the island. From its color and state, it looked more like a part of the shadow. However, it wasn't a thin layer, but instead filled with flesh and blood. It looked extremely strange. It supported itself with the elbows and moved forward with great difficulty, as though it wanted to pull out a bigger and more terrifying parts from within. The entire island began to shake. The transparent eyes of mystery prying suddenly shattered. Bernadette's eyes immediately closed as if she had been a blinding light or encountered some unable damage. Blood trickled down from the corners of her eyes as if the color in her face strained significantly. On her body, a pair of illusory and holy wings spread out, descending upon her with its clean white feathers and neutralized the invisible corruption. Indeed, she had the ability to resist. The Emperor's shirt left a huge inheritance for her. Before I taught Ma'am Hermit a lesson, she liked to use the eye of mystery prying to examine people and objects around her. Definitely had something to do with how she was brought up. In short, it's just all Roselle's fault. Klein heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but criticize the Emperor. Then his mind raced and analyzed the scene that Bernadette had prophesied. A terrifying creature crawls out from the mausoleum after the stone doors opened. This might be the resurrected Roselle, or perhaps a symbol of some kind of disaster. For example, a particular outer deity who had once corrupted the island, or primitive moon who secretly corrupted Roselle. Yes, even if it's Roselle, he definitely wouldn't be taking on the form of a human. He even closed closer to that of a mythical creature or deity. Also, I can't be sure if the terrifying creature or rational or if it's communicant. There's another important problem. Was the stone door opened by Bernadette or someone else? Or did the terrifying creature in the mausoleum do it by itself? If it's the latter, then things might develop a new stage of prophecy, even if we don't do a thing. A prophecy is truly filled with ambiguity. Klein conjured a gold coin and flicked it, making a divination. The results of the dream divination showed that the mausoleum was both dangerous and safe. How do I interpret this? As Klein pondered, he focused his attention onto Bernadette. Bernadette took nearly a minute to recover and stopped appearing that weak. However, she was temporarily unable to interpret the direction of the prophecy from the scene that she saw. She could only confirm that the problem was definitely very complicated. Due to the eyes of mystery prying shattered, there was no way for her to use the sea of Barry's secret. All she could do was use the invisible servant's perception to observe the situation around her. She realized that Edwards remained silent and motionless when she was unable to control the invisible servant, as though she hadn't noticed anything abnormal. After some thought, Bernadette said to Edwards through the invisible servant, "Do you still remember the years you spent in Lemberg?" Edward's indifferent blue eyes moved. "I remember, I think." At this point, he seemed to recall something. His expression twisted, as though he was suffering some indescribable pain. In such a state, his eyes suddenly glowed with a strange light. I think I'm already dead." What? That's crazy. What would make you come to that conclusion? So crazy. You really think that? Already dead, Edwards turned his head and looked at Bernadette's invisible servant with light blue eyes. His gaze was no longer cold and blank. It emanated a strange light glint that was filled with disbelief. It was only in this moment that he seemed to realize that he had long died and come back to life. Took him that long to find out? Took him that long to realize? Okay, buddy. Sounds good. His gaze was no longer cold and blank. It emanated a strange glint that was filled with disbelief. It was only in this moment that he seemed to realize that he had long died and come back to life. He was no different from William, Polly, and Grimm, who had claimed they're individuals who would need to keep up one's guard against. This transformation lasted for 2 seconds before Edward's face twisted. His already pale skin rapidly dimmed and ruptured inch by inch. Ooh. Beneath his skin, red pieces of flesh began to rot at an indescribable speed, dribbling foul yellow liquid. With a swoosh, Edwards raised his black axe in his hand. His axe ruthlessly cleaved the top of his head as though it was trying to stop the bad thoughts that surfaced in his mind. The axe was heavy and sharp. It tore through Edward's skull as it waved to its glabella. Drip, drip, drip. Drops of milky white cerebrospinal fluid. Holy fuck. Cerebrospinal fluid. Fucking idiot. Oh my god. Cerebral spinal fluid. Dripped down the axe's blade, sliding across Edward's grimaced and torn face, as though he had poured some milk onto a bright red strawberry. Don't come near me," Edward said in a low and hoarse voice as Bernadette's invisible servant after striking himself in the head. Before he could finish his cerebro. Before he could finish his sentence, his expression returned to the cerebrospinal. Before he could finish his sentence, his expression returned to a blank state. He looked at his eyes, gradually turned hollow. As he turned around and walked towards the forest, the thin and shriveled body of his stopped a little, as though his back was hunched. Bernadette had probed him because of the doubts and concerns he had about entering the mausoleum. All she could do was indirectly determine the problem with Edward's existence and see if he could obtain more clues from his answer. Hi. She never expected the knight from Roselle's era, who had been famous across the northern continent, would react in such a strange manner. After 2 seconds of silence, Bernadette made an invisible servant say to Edward's back, "Your descendants are doing pretty well. All of them are accomplished in a certain sense." Edward, whose back was facing the mausoleum, stopped for a moment. Then he continued forward, passing the invisible boundary and entering the forest. His target seemed to be in the direction of the cemetery and stone pillar, the place where his deceased could obtain new life. At the same time, Bernadette looked into the sky. The faint black colors that permeated the area had clearly faded, but there was an indescribable feeling that the entire primitive island underwent a subtle change that could accurately be described. Suddenly, Bernadette, who was hiding at the edge of the invisible boundary, rubbed her back. She felt that she had a heavy, as though she had something there. When her left palm touched the target, Bernadette realized that the extra strand of hair. At this moment, she was wearing an Inta-style blouse with large lace floral around the collar and indigo-patterned captain's uniform, a pair of beige trousers, knee-length boots, and a triangular hat and feathers on it. She was dressed like the leader of a pirate ship. She styled herself such that her long chestnut hair was tied into a bun, leaving the remaining strands in the way that would reach the middle of her back. But now, even though her hairstyle remained unchanged, her hair had grown longer and reached her waist. Then Bernadette lowered her head and looked at her right palm. She saw the fingernails in her 5 fingers extending. Queen Mystic didn't show any signs of surprise or panic. She followed the instincts of a clairvoyant, and from the experiences she had accumulated over time, she took a few steps forward. And through the invisible boundary, she completely left the primitive forest and entered the empty area where the back Emperor mausoleum was. During this process, Bernadette even made an invisible servant return to the spirit world. 3 to 4 seconds later, she felt the earth shake. The mausoleum began to tremble visibly. Subconsciously, Bernadette turned to look at the primitive forest. Her gaze froze for a moment. The dark green trees were waving their branches and uprooting their roots. Then, like humans, they approached Bernadette. The entire primitive forest had come to life. Looking at the dense cluster of trees and seemed to blot out the sky surging at her, Bernadette had a feeling that doomsday was approaching. She felt the entire area would be blackened by the forest. A gigantic red dragon with flames flowing across the skin rapidly flew into the sky. An 8-legged demonic wolf began to run madly between the trees. All supernatural beings and mutated creatures on this island stirred as they rushed towards the mausoleum. Although she was a clairvoyant, Bernadette still didn't expect that her simple, indirect question would bring about such an anomaly. It was as though it was the key and had opened the door to the abyss. Above the great fog, Klein saw a lot more. Together with his knowledge of mysticism, he had a certain guess. The situation of Edwards is different from Williams and Graham and Polly. It's like loopholes of that order on this primitive island, or rather a shadow. When he realized that he was already dead, the loophole was discovered by the Order and began to conduct repairs, and the repairs brought about by the enchantment of the Order, causing the entire island to experience an abnormality. I can sense that the Black Emperor's powers are present here in a certain degree. It affects Edwina, causing him to maintain a portion of his will after obtaining new life. And where did the original order of the primitive island come from? As Klein's thoughts raced, he suddenly sensed that Bernadette was suffering certain anomalies. Thump, thump, thump. Bernadette could vaguely hear her own heartbeat. This heartbeat was rather chaotic, and as though it was combined with 2 sounds. 2. Bernadette's heart stirred as she calmly directed her attention back to herself. In the next second, she confirmed that there was only 2 sources of her heartbeat. One came from her heart, while the other from her abdomen. One was rapidly expanding and contracting. Furthermore, this heart was developing bit by bit. Without needing to use her mystery prying powers to look at her abdomen, Bernadette immediately sensed that there was a fetus in her room. Oh my god, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this again. Bro, fetus deletus. It had grown to the size of a grape and was the size of a normal human palm. If it was left to grow, it didn't seem like it would take long before it matured. Oh my god. It would then tear open her mother's womb and drill out while covered in blood. Unknowingly, Bernadette had become pregnant. Her spiritual... Oh my god, stop it, stop it, stop it. Spiritual perception sealed artifact in her body was failed to detect, advance, and attempt to stop it. It was though she was powerless to deal with such an influence. Earth Mother, Primordial Moon, Mother Tree of Desire, 3 divine names flashed through Bernadette's mind. According to what she knew, there were many mysteries that could cause such an abnormality. Most of them came from the domain related to Earth and the Moon pathways. Sequence 0 of the plantar pathway was Mother. The primordial moon could make a stone have reproductive powers, while the Mother Tree of Desire seemed to possess some high sequence beyond the characteristics of the moon pathway. Bernadette wasn't in a hurry to deal with the fetus in her stomach. Why are we not in a hurry? Why are we not finding a staircase to throw ourselves off of right now? Why is there no urgency when we know what pregnancy is in this book? We know that nobody has a good pregnancy in this book. 90% of the time someone's dying, and it's most likely the person carrying the child and also the child. It's never pretty. It always leads to disaster. About, I think 9 times out of 10, it's probably a deity trying to ascend to the world. Like, why is there no urgency about this child? We literally just said that if it's not dealt with now, it's gonna grow at an exponential rate. Oh, thank you. I got them pink. Would you not? Like, here's the thing. Would you not? In Lord of the Mysteries? I'm sorry, if I'm pregnant and I'm in this world, no. I have not read one good pregnancy. The only good pregnancy that I've read in this entire book was Will Acceptance. And it's still Will Acceptance. Like, it's still not a normal baby. It's not a normal pregnancy. She still gave birth to a deity. Or not a deity, an angel. Bernadette wasn't in a hurry to deal with the fetus in her stomach. Her gaze turned dark once again as she used her prophetic ability to her best choice was. Her best choice is getting rid of the fetus. This time, she only took 1 second to obtain the correct corresponding prophecy. Survival lies inside the mausoleum. Is there a Planned Parenthood inside the mausoleum? Without any hesitation, Bernadette... Oh my god, okay, I'm gonna stop. Without any hesitation, Bernadette reached out her right hand and quickly drew out her words filled with a stellar radiance. These words with her were similar to the words on the blasphemy stake, quickly interwoven with a strange symbol, and opened with a secret door that seemed to leap down into the spirit world. Following that to the secret door opened with a strong gust of wind that blew out, transforming into the entity that was half man, half air. Her upper body was wrapped in light cloth. Must have been the wind. Sage frontlet. Bernadette's tone was calm as she ordered a dignified voice. The man responded respectfully and removed the accessory from the white cloth wrapped around his body. The core of this accessory was a vertical eye embedded with diamonds. It shimmered with pure light, exuding the abnormal holiness. It was filled with intelligence, but it also appeared cold without any warmth. Bernadette then took the accessory and embedded it into the middle of her forehead. This was a grade 0 sealed artifact, which Bernadette usually didn't carry with her, as the negative effects were too severe. However, at this moment, the sage frontlet had the ability that was extremely important to Bernadette. She was willing to bear the consequences of not being able to use evil magic, and the gradual influence of the beyond characteristic would have on her, as it showed fused with her. If she didn't remove the sage frontlet in the short period of time, it would be equivalent to having a sequence 2 potion splashed on her. When the time came, she could either end up lucky and succeeding in advancing and become a sage, or lose control and become a monster. And with other supplementary ingredients in the corresponding ritual, the former probability was nearly negligible. With the diamond, that's what I'm saying. This thing is still growing. Why are we focusing on this? There is more pressing issues. Began turning incorporeal, she disconnected into a series of complicated knowledge. In an instant, she became a creature of pure information. The baby in her womb failed to obtain such a state as it fell to the ground. It was half the size of a normal baby. Oh my god, bro. That thing grew so fast. It already had facial features and limbs, its skin was wrinkled, and it was dripping with sticky pus. As it left the mother's body, the underdeveloped it began began regardless and quickly melted into the air. The baby was clearly unwilling to give up. It tried its best to open its eyes, which were sealed by the sticky liquid. It opened its mouth wide open and bid to make a final struggle. At this moment, Klein, who was above the great fog, rapped the edge of the long molten table. He increased the probability of failure with respect to the baby struggling. Oh my god, this is actually kind of sad. What the fuck? Unable to maintain itself, the baby completely dissipated in front of the approaching black forest. At the same time, the flood of information that Brenda had transformed into had entered the black Emperor Mausoleum interior thought and heavy stone door and reformed her original body. During this process, she seemed to see a black shadow. Oh my god, crazy. No, because here's the thing. I get rid of it. However, I'm like, I don't want to see it struggling. That's kind of sad. Just, you know. When she entered the Black Emperor's mausoleum, Brenda vaguely saw a black shadow. However, after she... Also, I have a question. Why is everybody getting pregnant? Why is everybody just getting pregnant? Why? Why is that the way that we've decided to do this? All the angels and the gods and the deities and the outer deities and all of them, why is the way that we've decided to do this by getting people pregnant? Curious, you know? Oh my god. It's actually insane. I know, fuck. When she entered, why can't I read this? When she entered the Black Emperor, there it is. When she entered the Black Emperor's mausoleum, Brenda vaguely saw the black shadow. However, after she extricated herself from being the embodiment of information and resembled her body with pure, messy knowledge, she didn't see anything. It was as though she had just experienced what experience was just an illusion. Queen Mystic wasn't in a rush to venture deep into the mausoleum. She stayed in her spot and carefully observed her surroundings. Without using the powers of mystery prying, everything was clearly present before her eyes. The interior of the Black Emperor mausoleum. That's what I'm wondering. I'm gonna meet Cuttlefish. You know what? One day, mark my words. Mark this day on the calendar. Wednesday, June 10th. I'm gonna meet Cuttlefish one day, and I'm gonna sit down with him and be like, hey, I have questions. Firstly, what's the thing you got going on with pregnancy? Like, what prompted this? No shame, no shade. Strictly just curious. Why? You know? Also, are you allergic to mushrooms? Do you just not like mushrooms? What's with that? Monocles. When you were young, did like someone scare you when they just happened to be wearing a monocle, so it left like a bit of a trauma for you? That's another question I have. I don't know. Yeah, I'll think of a list. We'll keep going with them. I'm trying to think. There was one other thing I wanted to ask him. Ed Sheeran thing. Yeah, like I know your wife liked Ed Sheeran. Crazy that you did like government name. Like we were like, hey, Ed Sheeran. It wasn't just Ed, it wasn't just Sheeran, it was Ed Sheeran. Kind of crazy, but, you know. I think I'm just not hating to my full potential. That's truly what it is. I know. Bloodborne's also a really good game, so can't blame him. When she... Where was I? She didn't sense anything, and it was though she had experienced was just an illusion. Queen Mystic wasn't in a rush to venture deep into the mausoleum. She stayed in her spot and carefully observed her surroundings. Without using the powers of mystery prying, everything was clearly represented before her. Oh my god, the interior of the Black Emperor Mausoleum was empty. Apart from the pitch black walls and the high platform in the middle, there was nothing. On the high platform, there was a chair that looked like it was preparing for a giant. It was made of iron, and its surface was engraved in complicated and distorted patterns. At the top of the seat, there was a crown-shaped object. At that moment, there was a single figure in the head, huge, heavy... Why am I not able to read this? Single figure on a huge, heavy seat, and it was waiting for the Emperor to return. Just as Bernadette was about to take a step forward and approach the platform, she suddenly realized that her body was completely immobilized, as if she was being bound tightly with invisible shackles. Right on the heels of that, pairs of illusory and holy white wings appeared behind her as though they were passively resisting something. In the next second, a pair of angel wings, white feathers dropped as they fluttered. They grew deformities, thin, fluffy limbs, and grasped at the layers of the feathers, spread open one after another as though they had become countless eyes. The deformed feathers immediately let out a crisp laugh, causing the hollow chuckle to echo inside the mausoleum. After all of them had come alive, turning into miniature winged creatures. This reminded Bernadette that some fairy tales that her father had told her, there were always little pixies that weren't as big as thumbs in them. As though they flashed through the mind, Bernadette felt her right eye twitch. The eyelash in her eye grew rapidly, turning into a thin arm that... The eyelashes of her eye grew rapidly, turning into thin arms that took root on her face, trying hard to pull her eyeball out. I see it. The veins in Bernadette's right eye protruded as they let out a childlike voice as though they had gained sentience and consciousness of her body. What the fuck? This was also a form of new life. I'm over this whole new life bullshit. I'm done. Euthanize the people. Like, no more. Almost at the same time, Bernadette left her ear suddenly drooped down and covered her... Wait, stop. At the same time, Bernadette's left ear suddenly drooped down and covered her ears. I don't want to hear it. The ears shouted with a sharp voice, as if she didn't use her spirituality. Bernadette would definitely imagine that she had a young maiden by her side, one that was covering her ears, stamping her feet, and screaming. Without cushioning anything, the stage frontlet in the middle of her forehead automatically let her body and floated into the air. The surface of the vertical eye, embedded with diamonds, instantly flashed countless cold beams of light, and the thought's numerous tiny eyes had grown out of it. Each eye reflected Bernadette. The stage frontlet had also obtained a certain level of characteristics. Just as the Grade 0 sealed artifact was about to awaken and affect its target, a pale, white, slender, illusory palm reached out and grabbed it. Yeah, because of course it did. The sage frontlet's living characteristics rapidly dispersed as though it had reached the end of its life. An ice-cold, pale hand that clearly belonged to the woman came from behind Bernadette. At some point in time, a figure only an upper body appeared. The figure grew out of Bernadette's back and was almost transparent and rather illusory. She was wearing the same clothing as Bernadette, and she was wearing the same feathered triangle hat. Her blue eyes were like a projection under the sea. It was like Bernadette herself, part of her spirituality that had drilled out of her body. However, there was a pale white face mask in Bernadette's half-body phantom. The mask only had holes where one eyes with no other gaps between. This made Bernadette's phantom appear extremely cold and noble, but it lacked the aura of a living being. This was the third item she possessed and was also her last Grade 0 sealed artifact. It was an item made from Emperor Rosel's return to the southern continent years later called Pale Death. Its negative effects was to make the wearer slowly die until it became a corpse and become its slave. At this moment, Bernadette had used the point of restraining an abnormal life growing in her. Just as the half-body phantom appeared on her right eye, eyelashes turned thicker and longer as arms began to fall one by one. The ears didn't make any noise either. They slowly opened and returned to normal. With such suppression, Bernadette's facial features, arms, and legs would have broken apart and seek freedom. After stabilizing her body, Bernadette tried to take a step forward. However, she was still unable to do anything. All she could do was control the half-bodied spirit body. After some thought, she made the spirit body behind her take a ritual silver dagger from her pocket, then bending down and drew a circle in the middle of her right boot. This was a rippling sound, and the leather boot quickly shortened by half. Then Bernadette used the half-body spirit to tear her pants near the left knee. She cut a corner of her coat and blouse, removing all of the feathers on the side of her triangular hat. This attempt didn't seem to have anything to do with supernatural beings. It was just like a willful and rebellious girl who wanted to dress up in a different way from a normal sense of aesthetic. However, As Bernadette completed these series of actions, she carefully took a step forward. Her body could actually move and she no longer felt restrained. The invisible suspension effective vanished instantly, and Black Emperor Mausoleum seemed to accept Bernadette in this form. Who would have thought that something an ordinary person could do was able to deal with such abnormalities? Furthermore, Bernadette suspected that more she used her beyond her powers to resist whatever she was facing, the deeper the effects. This was because she had a feeling that she was facing the invisible deity. Only by pleasing the other party's sense of aesthetic could she be pardoned. Otherwise, she could only rely on the authority of a sequencier and circle around. In addition, the lucky thing that was Bernadette wasn't once a knowledgeable mysticologist. She also had a deeper understanding of the Black Emperor pathway. She knew that the authorities this domain consisted of. She knew that it represented the shadow of order, a distortion of order. This was why Bernadette twisted the normal order around her using her dressing, thus obtaining the recognition and acceptance of an invisible deity. Yes, in the matter regarding to mysticism, knowledge and ideas are more useful than the abilities at times. In that situation just now, any resistance would have been viewed as a provocation towards the internal order of the mausoleum, triggering unpredictable and terrifying changes. Once one figured out the crux of the problem, the negative effects would be easily resolved. Klein nodded above the grey fog and learned quite a lot from mysticism. Although he was already a sequence higher than her, to the point of being king of angels, inside Sephra Castle, and having experienced quite a number of major events, his growth had been too fast. He was still lacking when it came to details and problems, now that the perfect time was to make up the deficiency through observation. After taking a step, Bernadette began to follow her spiritual intuition and walked towards a huge empty chair on her platform. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. Suddenly, a breeze blew past her neck. This cold wind made Bernadette's body turn numb. At that thought, she felt a black shadow appear behind her. Silently, her long chestnut-colored hair parted, revealing a pair of eyes on her scalp. In the pair of eyes without an eyelash, there were almost transparent, cold and heartless. Eyes of mystery prying. The pair of eyes suddenly turned and saw that the shadow-like curtain in the mysterious world showed clear signs of distortion. However, it didn't notice the shadow, nor did it find the source of the cold wind. Just as Bernadette attempted to close the eyes of Mystery Prior and lower the possibility of ancient, the cold, sinister breeze suddenly appeared in her mind. Her thoughts became active as she increasingly out of control. She was unable to direct her thoughts in a required manner, and seemed to be couldn't change one that led to chaos. Without any hesitation, Bernadette grabbed a few seconds of thought as she was capable of, and left her body, spirit, and the black, removed the pale white mask. Then she put pale death on her face, with the half-body spirit retracted into her body and fused with her. From this second onward, Bernadette's thoughts would gradually die along with her body. However, her thoughts could not help but stir the turn chaotic. Both of these conflicting conditions offset one another, forming a weak and delicate balance, and helped Bernadette regain her ability to think. To Bernadette, compared to the Beyonders' effects of pale death itself, its negative effects were even more effective at this moment. Maintaining the balance, Bernadette took a few steps forward. During this process, she always felt that there was more shadows hovering around her, but she couldn't find them no matter how hard she tried. After thinking for a few seconds, Bernadette's blue eyes darkened once again, losing focus. So she tried prophesizing the consequences of her choice. Soon, a corresponding scene appeared before her eyes. After putting on the sage frontlet again, she once again transformed into pure and complicated information streams, using it to circumnavigate the obstruction and head to the high platform in the middle. However, just as she approached, the flood of the information suddenly disintegrated. It lost its order and formed several Bernadettes built on different tenets. There was a young girl in layered dresses, a tall young girl, a melancholic and confused girl, a woman with twisted and pained expressions, and a calm and determined queen. "Aw, Bernadette!" The prophetic vision instantly disappeared, and Bernadette's eyes instantly regained focus. At this moment, she saw the black shadow. It was standing right in front of her, no more fist away from her. The face formed into a pure shadow completely occupied her vision. I can't believe we're I think I still have 90 chapters to go. But the fact that I only have 90 chapters to go, I've already read so much. Crazy. I'm almost done. The moment Bernadette saw the black shadow, she instinctively clutched her right hand and conjured an active spear. From the tip of the spear to her handle, it was dyed with crimson-red balls. It emanated a strong, destructive aura as though it could harm a true deity. Spear of Longinus. The spear had once again appeared in ancient era that could be tracked back, stained to the blood of the great existence. At this moment, it had descended into the Black Emperor Mausoleum. I know, and then there's Koi. I'm gonna read Koi. There's so much more! It had descended into the Black Emperor's mausoleum through mystical reenactment. However, when Bernadette thrust it forward, she failed to achieve any effects because the tip of the spear was directed at her back. Despite wanting to attack the black shadow in front of her, the spear of Longinus had strangely thrust backward. The area had been affected by disorder or suffered some form of distortion. Above the gray fog in the palace, Klein noticed that the black shadow, when it appeared in front of Bernadette, he didn't hesitate to raise the staff of the stars in his hand. He didn't wait this time, unlike the prior observation of Queen Mystic. No, I'll read Koi. I'm gonna read Orv, and then I'm gonna read Koi. I'll do it. I was told Koi is good, so... He didn't wait this time, unlike his prior observation of Queen Mystic's action, before he would consider if he would provide her with protection. This was because the level of danger in Black Shadow sounded off alarms within him. He was an angel of the seer pathway after all. Because here's the thing, I'm meeting Cuttlefish at some point in my life. We're sitting down and having a conversation. I need to have read Koi to do that. Or else I'll just like, yeah, I read Lord of the Mysteries. Give me like, have you read it? And I'll be like, no, I haven't read your other work. And then I'm just a fake fan. I'm a poser. It'd be so disrespectful. When all the gems embedded in the black cane lit up and bells were sounding in the area when Bernadette and the Black Shadow were here. I know I can't LARP in front of him. Here's the thing. When I meet Cuttlefish, I already have to look him in the eyes and say... and he'll be like, what did you think of the book? What were some of your theories while you were reading the book? And I have to look him in the eyes when I do that, and I have to tell him the theories that I had while reading this book. I have to tell him what I originally thought the cocoons were, you guys. I have to tell him my original theory on Klein being the ancient sun god, and it all being a loop. I need to redeem myself, and have read Koi, at least. The bell that came from the infinite distance exuded an indiscernible emptiness. It made interior of the Black Emperor Mausoleum. Oh, fuck, dude, I gotta read the whole discography. Oh, I gotta tell him that I didn't like Captain Dunn. Dude, he's gonna sit down with me for 5 minutes and be like, why the fuck did I write these books? Why did I make these books accessible to the people and not screen people before I allowed them to read it? He's like, anybody's just picking up this shit nowadays. The bell that came from an infinite distance exuded an indescribable emptiness. It made the interior of the Black Emperor's mausoleum visibly freeze, turning into Bernadette's figure stiff as he had been frozen. She couldn't do anything. However, the black shadow didn't sink in the vortex of time, as though it's situated in another world, built completely different fundamental rules, and shadow continued moving forward in between the contradictory of two rivers of fate. One filled with raging turrets, and the other was almost completely still. This only made it appear to slow down, in no way affected by the illusory bells. This was the first time Klein had encountered such a situation after he gained the ability to replicate powers. Although the Beyonder effect had replicated with the star of the staff, the staff of the star, the star of the staff, shut up! Staff of the Stars were lacking comprehended to the original version, it would still be able to show a certain level of authority that wasn't easy to ignore regardless. However, the Black Shadow's slow movement gave him a second chance to try again. This time, he activated the Staff of the Stars' powers and moved Queen Mystic out of the Black Emperor's mausoleum. He wanted to first conclude what she was experiencing before considering entering again. Gems, I'm good. I read it, and then I read it again because I thought I read it wrong, but I actually read it right. And then my brain got really confused. And then I just need to tell myself to shut up. In the next second, he appeared tens of meters away, appearing near the high platform of the mausoleum. The staff of the stars teleported was disrupted. The destination had been distorted, turning everything extremely chaotic. The experienced Bernadette didn't feel any fear or panic because she was stuck inside the Black Emperor's mausoleum. She distinctively raised her left hand and pressed the stage frontlet in the middle of the forehead as she used her fingers to stroke the pale death mask. The shimmering golden mask suddenly became soft and rapidly squirmed, as if it was about to form a face that didn't belong to Bernadette. The face had soft features and obvious characteristics of the southern continent native, but it exuded a bizarre and terrifying feeling. Anyone who witnessed it would believe that it would come alive once the face became clear enough. An entity that came from the ancient times and shone in darkness when the dead slumbered. By then, Bernadette's body, spirituality, and consciousness would all belong to this face. Me and Cuttlefish are in the ring. By then, Bernadette's body, spirituality, and consciousness would all belong to this face. With the I'm so happy I caught myself. Protrusion of this face, the stone walls and floor tiles in the Black Emperor Mausoleum began to weather. It happened so fast 1,000 years appeared to wash away the short span of 2 seconds. Then quickly became molten, consistently dropping fragments and throwing up dust due to the wind. In between the cracks, thin white fur grew out. In the blink of an eye, the fur grew into white feathers. I caught myself before I finished the word. Soaked in light yellow oil, the aura of the black figure gradually weakened as though it was running towards the death in huge strides. Its color faded away, its movement growing slower. With the area with the pale white mask was, even the concept of death itself would wither away and dissipate. However, with the label as death wasn't the end point. There was a stone wall and floor tiles in the mausoleum were weathered to a certain extent, and when the black figure degraded into a certain stage, new stone blocks began to take form. The ethereal auras grew quickly. During this process, the black figure stretched out his right hand. The palm that was formed with the shadow suddenly grabbed Bernadette's neck and froze dozens of meters away. This wasn't fulfilled by extending the arm, but distorting the concept of distance. For an instant, 45 meters became equivalent to 45 centimeters. The dark palm didn't exert too much strength, but it made Bernadette feel cold. Under such coldness, she realized that she couldn't use 2 grade 0 sealed artifacts in Sage, Frontlet, and the Pale Death. Typically, as long as she interjected her spirituality into it and gave the corresponding thoughts, the sealed artifacts in her would react to the corresponding manner, creating different effects. But now the silent process and rules of being disrupted and distorted. No amount of thoughts that Bernadette wielded were able to stir the sealed artifact. The new faction. Oh my god, stop. Don't talk to me about lore. Because I can't do anything. That's so rude. I want to know lore so bad. So bad. I get so much FOMO. Klein, who was above the gray fog, didn't waste any time after failing to teleport Queen Mystic away. A series of complicated symbols and magic labels quickly formed in his mind. He wanted... He wanted to replicate a secret source for space concealment. He planned on separating Beyonder's location from the Black Emperor Mausoleum. Dude, I'm gonna open lore and I'm just gonna be like, it's just gonna be thrown in my face. Every spelling mistake, every pronunciation, all of it is just gonna... I'm gonna have to relive all of it. All of the horror. Black Emperor Mausoleum and concealing it to help Queen Mystic escape her current predicament. In fact, it might be more appropriate recalling the fairy tale magic peach blossom source. By considering how Bernadette was formerly a mysticologist, Klein felt that it was better to use space concealment, otherwise he might expose some of the fool's secrets. As for where he learned space concealment from, it naturally came from the recently advanced force. Previously, in the name of the word... the world Garamond Sparrow, Klein had rented Leymano's travels. He had also requested Miss Magician to record the corresponding powers. Then he realized the record it while summoning the complete Leymano's travels from the fog of history again and again. It didn't take long for him to grasp the knowledge and technique, allowing him to replicate spirit of concealment. As more gems Lit up on the staff of the stars, the area around Bernadette darkened as though she was covered by a curtain weaved by shadows. The current distorted and concealed the space, isolating the black shadow in the palm outside. This helped Bernadette regain her freedom. In the next second, the black palm that had been forcefully separated reached towards again and touched the boundary of concealment space. In an instant, the transparent vortex-like door appeared in the abnormal void, or rather, the secret door that originally existed appeared autonomously and opened up in front of the black palm. All concealed space had a door, but the location of the door depending on the creator's thoughts. The bomb formed and the shadows rapidly passed through the open door and entered the concealed space. It grabbed Bernadette's neck and once again disrupted the connection between Queen Mystic and her sealed artifact, distorting the corresponding order. At the same time, the black figure raised his hand and looked at the top of the mausoleum. It seemed to be studying separate Castle and Klein's thoughts through layers of space and fog. Klein's eyelid twitched instinctively. He sensed that the shadow had certain understanding of where it was and felt that it was distorting some things. Klein's expression unknowingly turned abnormally heavy, and different gems of the stars lit up at the same time. He wanted to attempt to seal the corresponding Beyonder powers of the other party. Only by doing so would he have the chance to restrict the Black Shadow. In order to increase the success rate of stealing his target's powers, Klein turned his left palm and tapped the edge of the long molten table. However, this theft failed. He didn't even get any of his targets as long as they escaped and locked on, despite just standing there. Klein's gaze froze, then he saw the black figure flash and enter the concealed space, closing the distance between it and Bernadette. It distorted my true vision, causing the situation I saw to be from 1 or even 2 seconds. A thought flashed through Klein's mind as he made the preliminary judgment on the previous failure, then he decided to summon Will Acceptance historical projection to get him to reboot this area. At that moment, Bernadette, who was unwilling to use her sealed artifact, grew white, illusory swan feathers on her back. This was the fairy tale magic Ugly Duckling. It could make Bernadette reveal an incorporeal mythical creature form while maintaining her clarity of mind. She could use it. It says should, but I'm assuming that's she. She could use it twice a day, with each use lasting 15 seconds. That was put really weird. At this moment, her thoughts went wild again. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. This caused her ugly duckling magic to be cut off before it even shows its effects. Almost at the same time, she saw black shadows stick with her body in the sticky, viscous, corrosive liquid that seeped into her body. Bernadette's eyes darkened as she suddenly sensed something. She grabbed the final moments of lucidity, opened her mouth slightly, speaking in fluent Chinese accent, home. The black shadow's infiltration paused for a moment. Its upper body slowly rose and looked at Bernadette. The fuck? The black figure froze. It released its grip on Bernadette's neck. It was as though it was staring at Queen Mystic with non-existent eyes. A dry, hoarse voice echoed in concealed space. Home. This voice is filled with hesitation and confusion, as though it was seeking confirmation. It was as if it had come from another world. A corrosion that Bernadette encountered vanished. Her connection with the sealed artifact was instantly restored. Pale death once again aided her vitality little by little. This helper had resisted the chaos in her thoughts, maintaining her basic clarity and rationality. Just as she was about to say something, a black figure suddenly stretched out its palm. But this time it didn't strangle Bernadette's neck, but instead it pushed her hand. Following this push was a collapse of concealed space. It was a voice filled with the pain, as though it was resisting something. Leave. As the voice echoed, the black figure vanished. In an instant, it appeared in the huge black high-backed chair in the middle of the platform. 2 cracks appeared on its face, as though 2 asymmetrical eyes had grown out. However, the eyes didn't have any pupils. It was blood-colored. Right on the heels of that, another crack appeared beneath the 2 eyes. They were lifted in a pure blood-red light. This allowed the black figure to finally open his mouth. It faced Bernadette, as obvious sounds of pain resounded all around it, as though it had resisted something. Leave this place. After being pushed out one more than 10 meters away, Bernadette easily found her footing. However, she didn't follow the voice's orders by leaving the Black Emperor's mausoleum. She stood there, staring blankly at the central platform as though she looked at a black figure. Her expression revealed an unspeakable sadness. She could sense oh my god, no. She could sense and now confirm that the black figure was her father, the man who called her Caesar, Roselle Gustave. In the next second, more cracks appeared on the black figure's body. They ruptured from top to bottom, blooming blood-red flowers in different parts of his body. This made Roselle look like he was left with the shadow that wrapped around the blood-red object and emanated pure light. When Klein saw this scene above the grey fog, he naturally thought of the crimson moon high in the sky. At this moment, Roselle seemed to have transformed into a shadow. He wanted to block the crimson moon. But opening was ruptured from his body, allowing more and more moonlight to shine into the real world. When the openings were connected together, the black shadow would completely split apart and give birth to a brand new crimson moon. When that happened, something extremely terrifying would definitely happen. At that moment, Roselle's black figure turned much more illusory, as though it had become an illusion. This made him look like he had been isolated in another world. There was an invisible barrier between him and the real world. Then Roselle raised his right arm in great difficulty and pinched his forehead. Oh my god, no, I'm gonna cry! No, 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 no! I just read something at the bottom of the page. The frequency at which blood-red cracks appeared on his body instantly decreased. Oh my god, no, I'm gonna... However, the eyes that had already appeared blanked repeatedly. However, this didn't bring any negative effects on the surroundings. It was as though it was just a simple change of order. The new growth of blood-red cracks was constantly being distorted, its original state only having graduated activity. After completing this, Roselle raised his head and looked at Bernadette, who was dozens of meters away. He said with a hoarse voice, "You really have become an important figure in the mysterious world. You managed to come here alone. Come over, let me see how my little princess has grown." Bernadette's eyes reddened as she took a step forward. Roselle laughed again. "Back when I made sketchbooks, textbooks, and invented all kinds of small games for you, were just a tiny... Now you're able to save your poor old father. I remember that you liked the clothes I designed for you when you were young. Unfortunately, you can't wear layered dresses after you're an adult." Oh my fucking god, I hate this. The Emperor rambled on as he arrived in his twilight years and someone who enjoyed reminiscing about the beautiful past. Bernadette walked faster and faster above the grey fog. Klein frowned indiscernibly. Suddenly, Emperor Roselle lowered his head and said with great force, "Stop." His voice carried an indescribable pain. Bernadette was stunned for a moment before she slowed down and stopped. She looked at the dark figure and her eyes gradually revealed an indiscernible sadness. Roselle raised his head again and coughed lightly. "Didn't you really want to ask why the Black Emperor's mausoleum has to be engraved with the order one implemented and the style that one ushered? In fact, this wasn't necessary. I just wanted to let anyone who sees it remember my greatness." Oh my god. Before he finished his sentence, the Emperor gripped the armrest to his side tightly. He suppressed his voice and said in extreme pain, "Don't come near me. I've been corrupted." The sadness in Bernadette's eyes deepened. Her guest had finally been confirmed. At that moment, the red cracks on Roselle's face began to turn chaotic. They closed and opened randomly with no signs of having an ununified will. The Emperor took the opportunity and straightened his body. He looked at Bernadette and shouted with great difficulty, "Seal me." "Seal." Queen Mystic Bernadette repeated the words silently. Her blue eyes quickly turned moist and her faint mist enveloped them. Even though she had lived for many years and no longer a little girl, in the past, she was still unable to contain her emotions. However, she didn't ask for the reason, nor did she hesitate. With just a single struggle, she firmly raised her right hand and pressed it on the pale white metal mask. She calmly made a decision, just like how she faced all the major events that happened in the elemental dawn over the years. On the surface of pale death, the instantly turned soft and reformed into a new face of 2 black eyes. In the deep black parts of the eyes, white lines appeared, forming an extremely complicated, mysterious 3-dimensional symbol. It was like a long feathered bird that coiled feathered serpents. The symbol absorbed the surrounding light and quickly turned corporeal. Then it separated from Bernadette's eyes and extended its body before flying towards Roselle Gustave in the iron black chair. Along the way, the strange symbol caused the surroundings to become increasingly dim. The floor tiles and stone walls suffered another round of weathering as the deity in charge of the death and passed the final judgment. The falling rumble and flying dust allowed the corporeal symbol and came to Roselle's side. Then they coiled around him, enveloping the illusory black figure that existed to seem in the world. During this process, Roselle failed to control himself several times. He attempted to leave the iron black chair, but he ended up sitting back down. He didn't resist the seal that Bernadette had exerted on him. As the symbol fused with the figure, he immediately held the connection with pale death. He saw the illusory deity that loitered loitered over the countless unswollen body of water ghosts loitering over the dark river. Roselle's aura immediately vanished as the cracked red openings closed one after another. What awaited the emperor was a quiet and peaceful sleep. As for the symbol, it was sealed with Roselle's body, constantly influencing him until pale death stopped responding. In the blink of an eye, several blood-red cracks appeared on Roselle's body again. After his aura declined to the nadir, it gradually began to glow as he fought back against the corporal symbol. Klein, who was above the grey fog, sighed when he saw this. He clenched his fists and pressed it against his mouth. The curtain he draped around himself suddenly rose up, and the entire Sephra castle boiled over in an obvious manner. Suddenly, the aura of new life that Roselle had just obtained began to dissipate. After vanishing to a certain point, it gained new life once again. Then it was affected by pale death and continued to fade away. Oh my fucking god, I hate this. Using the power of attendant mysteries beyond her characteristic in Sephra Castle, Klein directly grafted new life and death and skipped the process in between. The corruption that Roselle suffered was no longer able to recover to the extent needed to break through the pale seal. Following that, Klein extended his right hand and used the power of Sephra Castle to draw out the mysterious symbol behind the fool of the high-backed chair. The mysterious symbols made up by the pupilless eye and the contorted lines. The symbol absorbed by the aura of Sephra Castle and quickly turned to corporal. With the wave of Klein's wrist, it engraved the prayer light representing Bernadette. I literally can't see this. My eyes are getting really blurry. And landed on Roselle's black figure fusing to his body. Every time the grafting vanished, the symbol that was directly related to the fool in Sephra Castle would draw upon new powers and complete the grafting process once more. As he constantly passed away and gained new life, Roselle's face, which seemed to be pure shadow, obtained similar features. Then he looked at the top of the mausoleum as though he was looking in an infinite height. He then retracted his gaze and looked at Bernadette. He said with an abnormally weak voice, "This seal is good. I can sleep in peace." With that said, he frowned slightly and his tone changed. "Who taught you to dress like that?" Bernadette felt a little lost as she listened. It was as if she had returned to her teenage years. At that time, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. At that time, I'm already crying. At the time she dressed up to the nines for balls held by other nobles, Roselle would use similar expressions and similar tones to pepper her with a series of questions. The mist in her eyes became obvious and she could no longer control her. She could no longer control herself. She lowered her head and shouted, "Daddy." Roselle's facial features immediately turned gentle before tensing up again and sternly said, "Leave and never return again." Bernadette opened her mouth waiting to say something, but her vision went black as though she could see the shadow of order. In the next second, she found herself back at the edge of the primitive island. Bernadette stared blankly at the mountain peak in the middle of the primitive island for a few seconds before she slowly turned around, walking towards the sea. This time she didn't stubbornly insist on walking straight without looking back. Every few steps she took, she would stop and turn back to have a look. Soon she returned to the dawn and entered the captain's cabin. She opened the room and specifically used to hold her collection At the glance, Bernadette saw books, stacks of textbooks, clothes, and skirts. She saw the chess game a few people in the world knew, and a neat pile of wooden black toys. She leaned against the wooden door, slowly curled up and sat on the floor. She raised her head to look at the dark sky outside the captain. Oh my god. This is so sad. She raised her head to look at the dark sky outside the captain's cabin and pinched her lips with the right thumb of her index finger. She whistled a melodious tune. It was gentle, sweet, and sad melody that could calm people down. It was a melody echoed. Water bed beads fell from Bernadette's face and dripped onto the floor. After an unknown period of time, the captain's cabin was filled with a suppressed whimper. Daddy. It was really fucking sad. It was really sad. I waited over 1,300 chapters for this motherfucker to show up, and I don't think I've cried this hard since Dally died. Oh my god. I'm pissed. That was beautifully written too. Oh my fucking god. When that shit gets animated, holy. Oh my god, I'm crying so much right now. Okay. Oh my god. No, dude, when, like, here's the thing. The amount that I have cried from this book since volume 6, since like the end of volume 4, a bit in volume 5, but like volume 6 and volume 7, I have cried at least once every single stream. Maybe not cried, but I've teared up and gotten sad every single stream almost. I think maybe like 1 or 2 I haven't. And that was like at the beginning of volume 6 when it was just climbing them on, like going around. I'm going to be crying every single episode when we get to like season 6 and season 7. When this is on screen and I have to watch this, oh my god, no. Okay, I'm okay. In the middle of the primitive island, oh, the fact that you haven't changed the music yet is scaring me. The middle of the primitive island, the Black Emperor mausoleum, after sending away Bernadette, Roselle did immediately fall into a deep sleep. He slowly raised his head and looked up once again at the infinite distance. Above the great fog climbed sighed silently. He pulled down the staff of the stars and grabbed the paper figurine before shaking it. With a smacking sound, the paper figurine rapidly thickened and expanded before flying into the translucent vortex, formed the illusory, mysterious symbols because the fool's chair. Although Bernadette had already moved to the edge of the primitive island and Klein could no longer see the situation inside the Black Emperor mausoleum through the prayer light, however, he could use the symbol of the fool that merged with Roselle's figure to maintain connection with the Emperor to a certain extent. After a paper figurine passed through the slowly spinning vortex, it descended into the dim mausoleum which had unknowingly light source. It then turned into a human in front of the central platform. This human's black hair and brown eyes were somewhat similar to Gavin Sparrow! But he didn't have clear-cut features. The lines were deep enough and his bearing wasn't cold enough. I'm instantly in a better mood. Don't know what happened. And his bearing wasn't cold enough. There were also certain differences in a facial feature. His chin and stomach had a small... Oh my god, that's not Cameron Sparrow. It was Klein's original appearance as Zhao Mingui, the Zhao Mingui who had been hanging inside Sephir Castle for thousands of years, beside Roselle, Hao Tao Gustav. Roselle wasn't surprised by his appearance. With one hand on his arm as he leaned towards, slightly saying, "You're here." "I'm here," Klein nodded indiscernibly. "You shouldn't be here," Roselle sighed. "I'm already here." Klein very naturally participated in completing the meme populated by a Chinese novel by Gu Long. Having confirmed the origins of fellow in front of him, Roselle returned to the normal sitting posture, chuckling, and said, "I originally planned on asking where you're from to see there's no need for regional discrimination. But, after some thought, there's no need for that. We're all anachronistic, miserable wretches without a home." Without waiting for Klein's reply, the Emperor's voice sank and he asked, "You know the truth about the apocalypse?" "Yes." Roselle continued asking, "You know that this is Earth?" "Yes," Klein answered frankly. When Roselle heard that, he laughed self-deprecatingly. "You actually learned about it so early. I only dared to confirm it after I went to the moon and saw the true appearance of this planet from high above." At this point, the Emperor sighed and said, "The moon is bizarre. I clearly felt terror, but I didn't even consider the possibility of being corrupted. Then I became more and more extreme. However, I did occasionally gain a certain level of clarity from the views of people around me, but I didn't dare to write in any of the diary or state. I was afraid of exposing secrets and losing my final chance. I eventually decided to use all the groundwork I did previously to switch up to Black Emperor pathway. Apart from the impending apocalypse with Sequence Zero being the only ones capable of protecting the people they wish to protect, they can hide them in other planets and vast universes and use the corresponding authorities to rebuild a set of orders for humans to survive in distant lands. I also saw the hope of escaping my corruption by using the Black Emperor's ability to resurrect. As long as I became a Sequence Zero Black Emperor and was truly killed after turning half crazy, I'd have the chance of resurrecting in the mausoleum or in the astral world. When that happened, what would return to me would be a pure uniqueness of 3 Sequence 1 Beyonder characteristics. I wouldn't be tainted at all, nor will I continue to uncontrollable madness. Speaking of which, I made use of the eternal blazing sun and the goddess steam machinery to a certain extent back then, but the horror of the great old ones far exceeded my imagination. Accompanying my revival was a new life of corruption. Perhaps only great old ones can resist great old ones. I could only terminate the revival process and live such an ignorable existence in my final mausoleum to prevent the great old ones from using my body to be born in the real world. That would have brought about a devastating disaster. Klein had long guessed at Emperor Roselle's condition. Based on what he knew about what just happened, he wasn't surprised at all that he calmly replied, "The one who corrupted you is called the Mother Goddess of Depravity. She has bewitched many believers as the embodiment of the primordial moon." The facial features that appeared faintly on Roselle's face immediately changed. He fell silent for a few seconds before saying, "I know the primordial moon, but I didn't know that her true honorific name was Mother Goddess of Depravity. Now that I think about it, my discovery of Mr. Door's crying for help might not have been a coincidence." Aww. Upon hearing this, Klein was alarmed. He instantly recalled the situation having off-island. He had some sort of premonition about Emperor Roselle was about to say. Roselle laughed and sighed. "The biggest problem in the first half of my life was that I was too confident. I always had the feeling that I could reload and save a file and redo things. I didn't pay enough attention to the details. Back then, Grimm was corrupted by strange powers on this island. He returned here after dying and regained a new life. Isn't this the influence of the primordial moon? After I finished all sorts of investigations and did the corresponding purifications, I felt that I was fine. But in fact, fate might have undergone a tiny change at that moment. This resulted in me encountering Mr. Door later and was slowly guided to the moon by him. I can't blame Mr. Door. His condition might be worse than mine. Does the Emperor mean that he has been targeted by the Mother Goddess of Depravity the moment he discovered the primitive island?" Klein sighed. At that moment, who would have thought that the problem would be so serious? Before Sequence 2, understanding the cosmos and the Great Old Ones led to terrifying corruptions, and without understanding it, one wouldn't be able to accurately determine how serious the problem or what kind of patchwork was needed subsequently when facing with certain situations. This made Roselle treat this primitive island as his secret base, thus not informing existences that he had the right to understand the outer deities, Great Old Ones, or cosmos. That's right. Roselle seemed to be very gratified that he had committed the mistake almost anyone would make. He then said, In that ancient and secret organization, there was almost no mention of the Great Old Ones or outer deities. At that moment, Roselle paused for a moment before saying, "You should have read my diary. You should know what the ancient and hidden organization represents." Klein nodded. "I know which organization it is referring to. I never expected that you wouldn't dare mention the name of his organization after having reached the level of Sequence Zero. I have a nagging feeling that he isn't simple. He might have an understanding of the outer deities that far exceeds our imagination, so it's better to be more careful. After all, I'm not a complete Sequence Zero true god." After Roselle said that simple sentence, his brows suddenly furrowed. "How much of my diary did you read?" If the atmosphere wasn't that heavy and sorrowful, Klein would definitely find it irresistible to reply with, "The taste of the demoness ain't bad, hey!" as a way to tease his fellow earthling. No, this is so good! Finally, he replied calmly, "Plenty." After saying the word, he casually added, "I even found a few cards of blasphemy." Stop! This is so good! This is everything I wanted and more! "Which ones?" Roselle blurted out. Klein controlled the paper figurine expression from above the gray fog and said in a flat tone, "Black Emperor, Tyrant, Red Priest, and the Fool." Phew. Roselle exhaled a faint cease on his brows. Thankfully, it's not the demoness, the moon, or the mother card. "You had to mention it yourself." Klein didn't respond as he looked at Emperor without change in expression. I love him. I love Emperor Roselle so much. After Roselle said that, he realized something and hurriedly coughed. "Well, we've all watched live streams, so you should know very well how normal it is to cross-dress." As he spoke, he coughed again and sighed. "Which pathway are you from?" "Seer," Klein replied succinctly. Roselle immediately fell silent. After a few seconds, he said, "Unfortunately, if everything is fine and dandy, you should be responsible for pulling out a large-scale television and a game console from the historical void. We can chat while playing. That's a romantic dream of us men. Unfortunately, there's no electricity. I have to rely on you to invent it." Klein didn't voice out his thoughts. He maintained his tone and said, "I hope such a day will come." Then he pulled the topic back on track. "I'm very curious why the card of blasphemy you created can't even be found by deities. Such a level of anti-divination and anti-prophecy is amazing." Roselle immediately chuckled. "It's because knowledge can bring power, and power can bestow knowledge. This is the authority of the Knowledge Emperor. After I infused a potion formula with the 22 pathways with power, they naturally produced a convergence power between bionic characteristics. They also gain anti-divination and anti-prophecy effects to a certain extent." And then, as he spoke, Roselle suddenly paused. He thought he had sensed something amiss. "Don't ruin this for me! Don't ruin this for me!" "Oh my god, I'm so stressed." After 1 to 2 seconds, he said in an ethereal voice, "The creation of the cards of blasphemy was a year before I held the Black Emperor ritual. Back then, I had already suffered the corruption of the primordial moon, and I didn't have the corresponding realization most of the time. Why can the 22 cards not be found by deities?" Upon hearing this question above the gray fog, Klein's heart tightened as he felt his scalp tingle again. Without waiting for his response from the paper figurine, Roselle's voice suddenly raised, bringing with it an indescribable fear. "Don't gather the 22 cards. Be careful of the mother card." These two sentences echoed in the deep interior of Black Emperor Mausoleum for a long time. Above the gray fogs, Klein's pupils instantly widened as he subconsciously looked down the long molten table in front of him. There were cards of blasphemy with different patterns in the back. At the moment, he felt a little scared and relieved. He felt as though he had been wandering on the edge of the abyss with the blindfold, but he never fell. If he had done his best to gather all the cards of blasphemy, or he had obtained the mother card with the how he liked to put the different cards in his body to obtain the corresponding levels and special characteristics, he might have already been corrupted by the mother goddess of depravity, or be pregnant with something. However, I'm not Roselle. Even if I have the mother card, I probably won't have done so. Furthermore, in order to prevent the deities from finding it, cards of blasphemy are extremely difficult to gather. It's almost impossible to gather all of them. From the looks of it, it's casual arrangement made by the mother goddess of depravity. If anyone were unfortunately obtain the mother card, they would become one of the latent dangers in the world. Klein retracted his gaze and continued using his stand-in paper figurine substitute to look at Roselle Gustave, who was sitting on the black iron seat. At that moment, Roselle raised his body slightly, and his voice was sometimes low and sometimes high-pitched. Everything has godhood in them. The oldest one is still alive in everyone's bodies. Klein frowned slightly. He didn't know if one speaking was Roselle or the Crimson Moon in his body. Not only did he have a certain level of understanding regarding such secrets, he also personally experienced it before. Thus, he wasn't that horrified or panicked. He only recalled the teachings of the Aurora Order and had seen the past. They promoted the belief that the Creator was omnipotent and existent in every living being's body. Therefore, all living beings had godhood. Once godhood reached a certain concentration, they could become an angel, and the current Orthodox deities are nothing more than slightly strong angels. To ordinary people, as long as one was able to grasp the essence of life, was a spiritual travel and tempered one's mind, strengthen one's spirit, and find their own godhood, as well as fuse with more godhoods, one would be able to escape their mortal coils and become an angel. Back then, I felt that the cult, like the Aurora Order, had a complete set of mysticism and religious canon, just like the Orthodox churches, but now I can interpret the truth underlying these words. From a certain point of view, it's true. The only problem is that after fusing with more godhood, they might not longer be themselves. The true Creator actually placed the deepest secrets in this world into his teachings. Isn't he afraid that the believer might suddenly have an epiphany and learn of the underground's corruption, eventually becoming a vessel of the oldest one's rivalry? The hangman really is a little crazy. He doesn't have much rationality most of the time. Klein mumbled inwardly as he waited for Roselle to say more. 2 to 3 seconds later, Roselle, who had been in the cycle of slumber and obtained a new life, sat back on the iron-black throne. He panted and didn't say a word. Revelry. I think I said rivalry again. What can I say? Klein then controlled the paper figurine to say, "Which of the words that you have just said should be trusted, and which one should I be wary of?" Roselle chortled. "Consider the answer yourself." Isn't that how you seers like to speak? He didn't wait for Klein's reply and continued. "When I created Pale Death Mass, I sensed something. The death of the fourth epoch might not have completely perished. He might have left a hidden trump card for being revived. It might involve the river of eternal darkness. Death will definitely not die so easily." With that said, Roselle looked at Klein. He stood at the foot of the platform. Indeed, only by choosing the seer, apprentice, or marauder pathway can a transmigrator enter Sephra Castle. By the time I figured out this factor, it was already way too late. I don't know if you want to become a great old one or not, nor do I know if this requires a ritual. I can only tell you that this is definitely more dangerous than becoming a deity. Countless times more dangerous. Perhaps the existence who stored us and threw us back into the real world is waiting for you there. The only suggestion I can give you is to communicate with the genie of the magic wishing lamp before you make any attempts. I knew it. Genie, using the grudge between him and the celestial worthy to obtain certain assistance. Klein nodded slightly and said okay. After hearing his answer, Roselle sighed and said with a smile, "If you really can become a great old one, you can consider saving me. Only a great old one can resist a great old one." At this point, he fell silent for a moment before he slowed down his speech. "If you can completely free me from the corruption of the primordial moon, after becoming a great old one, then remember to wipe my existence off the face of the world. Destroy this mausoleum, support the creation of a new Black Emperor, and prevent me from ever being revived." "No!" The light inside the mausoleum seemed to dim a little. Klein fell silent for 2 seconds before saying, "I won't forget that." Roselle fell silent. After a few seconds, he laughed self-deprecatingly. "Of course, before that, you should try to save me a few more times." "Okay, stop. No, fuck, no. Oh my god, no." Such a sense of humor didn't make Klein smile. Instead, it made his heart sink even more, making him unable to speak. Roselle did continue on the topic as he recalled. "My wife passed away a long time ago. The mistresses I once had definitely had their own endings. Towards them, I feel very sorry. I've never truly loved them. I only coveted their looks and pleasure they gave me. I don't have any illegitimate children. Towards such matters, a Beyonder is quite aware of that. As for the time before I became a Beyonder, I believe those ladies definitely coveted my looks and body to enjoy such pleasures. They won't leave any trouble for themselves. My eldest son, Sel, should be dead for years. I don't know how many descendants he left behind. My second son, Bornova, would definitely be an angel now. If nothing unexpected happens, I have complicated feelings for him. On the one hand, I'm very detached, disappointed, and resentful, but on the other hand, I would occasionally secretly care about him. I remember how adorable he was when he was just born. You've already met my eldest daughter, Bernadette. Isn't she beautiful? He truly was just a girl dad. She was pretty from a young age, obedient and smart. She knew how to be file to her old father, protect her younger brothers, and dote on her mother. Sometimes she acted especially righteous and appeared a little silly. There were several times when I secretly cheated while playing chess or games with her, but she didn't realize it. I'm gonna cry again. Such a temper made it difficult for her to accept what I did later. Of course, now I can just push the blame onto the primordial moon. Isn't all because of her corruption? I'd rather grateful for her at this point. I don't know what right I have to make a request. After all, I've never helped you before. Nor do I have much of a relationship with you. It's just that we're from the same era and same place. The ties as fellow earthlings. Upon hearing that, Klein said in a deep voice, "Your diary gave me plenty of help. It allowed me to grasp a lot of high-level knowledge when I was weak, allowing me to avoid many dangers and know how to direct my efforts in a targeted manner. Also, those cards of blasphemy have shown their use at different stages. Can you not mention the diary?" Roselle coughed lightly and said, "However, in the later stages, I was indeed consciously leaving a message to the next transmigrator. The only thing I could be sure of is which language you know." The Emperor slowly exhaled and said, My request is to help me look after Bernadette. When she needs help, provide her some help. Although she was about to become an important figure in the mysterious world, I can't feel at ease as a father. Without any hesitation, Klein got the paper figure 8 to answer directly. "I'll take care of her for you." Man, why does this sound a little awkward? Roselle's tone instantly turned odd. Oh my fuck. By the way, I haven't asked for your name. As for me, you should know very well that my name is Hung Tao, Zhao Minguri. Klein answered frankly. "Are you married? Do you have children? How old are you?" Roselle raised 3 questions in one go. "Emperor, why are you acting like a gossipy middle-aged woman from next door?" Klein shook his head and gave a simple answer. "No." Roselle immediately fell silent. After a moment, he said, "You and I are of the same generation. Bernadette should call you Uncle Zhao." Yes. As he spoke, Roselle's tone suddenly became filled with pity. After coming... I know, I said that I butchered the name. I'm so sorry. After coming this era, I treated everything as a game in the beginning. I was having a great time playing, but I would occasionally recall my home, remembering the past where I cultivated most of my personality and hobbies. The longer I lived, the higher the frequency. I felt this feeling. It's like a fallen leaves will always want to return to the roots of the trees. However, at the very least, I have a daughter, a wife, and 2 sons. There are still many things in this world that I am worried about. You sense some of belonging in a certain extent. As for you, I can feel your loneliness. The loneliness that comes from deep within your bones. Upon saying that, Roselle suddenly sighed. If only we were still living in that era. I'll go to work punctually every day and work overtime from time to time. Whenever I'm free, I'll visit my daughter's extracurricular lessons, pick her up, bring her home, stuff my wife constantly reminds me about. Every weekend, we'll either head out for some fun or head to my parents' place to accompany them. When one day I'm exhausted from life, I'll use an excuse that you, as a friend, are teasing me. As men, we can sit by the street and eat some skewers, drink some alcohol, brag, curse our superiors, reminisce about the days of youth, and urge you to quickly find a girlfriend. When I wake up the next day, I'll be able to have the zeal to continue facing life again. Klein listened quietly without interrupting the Emperor's prattle. Roselle's voice gradually lowered and he smiled. "Goodbye, my friend. I hope we can really meet again one day." His figure quickly turned illusory as though he had disappeared from the world, leaving only a faint shadow hovering over the iron-black throne. Roselle Gustave had returned to eternal slumber. Okay, we're done. We're done. Oh my god, I didn't think I was gonna cry so much. Oh my god. Let me look at the art. Let me look at the art. Where is it? I don't even know where the art is. I actually can't see it either. Oh. This is so... Okay. Oh, Emperor Roselle! Okay. So that's all I got for the chapters today. Really great. Those were really, really good chapters. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. Tomorrow is like a longer stream. It'll be the next 11 chapters. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway, that was so sad. Okay, I remember when I first did like a character ranking, and I put Roselle as my like #1 character when I like first started the book, and you guys were like, no, why is he your #1 character? He's right back up there. You can suck my dick. He is, it's like Garamond Sparrow, Roselle. He's right back there. I love that man. I love him so much. Oh my gosh. This has reignited my love for Roselle that I had. Yes, you did. Certain people were like, why is Roselle #1? Why is Roselle #1? And I was like, because he's the best. And then now he's probably right back up there. I love him. But yeah. So that's all I got. Tomorrow, there is stream. It'll probably be at the same time. It'll be at the same time. It'll be the next 11 chapters. And then we have how it was broken up. It was 11 chapters, and then 15 chapters, and then the last 18 chapters. It'll be good. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. This was such a good chunk of chapters. Thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. I will see you guys next time. And we'll go. Okay. Bye-bye.